At 7:14 on a Friday morning, before most people's first cup of coffee is finished, $50 moves. Not dramatically. Not with ceremony. A transfer confirmation appears on a phone screen, a number shifts in a banking app, and the person holding the phone sets it face down on the kitchen counter and continues their morning. That is the entire visible event. $50, automated, silent, already gone before the day begins. What you just watched is not a trick. It is not a hack. It is not a motivational shortcut designed to make saving feel easier than it is. What you watched is a documented behavioral architecture, one that has been studied across millions of American households, validated by researchers at Harvard, the University of Chicago, Princeton, and the Federal Reserve, that survives the exact conditions that have destroyed every conventional savings plan you have ever attempted. And by the time this analysis concludes, you will know with institutional precision exactly what you are looking at when you see that $50 move on a Friday morning. You will know why it works when everything else has not. And you will know the 3 moves, executable tonight, in under 20 minutes, that start the same architecture running in your own financial life. But before the solution, the diagnosis. Because the reason you are here is almost certainly not that you have never tried to save money. The reason you are here is that you have tried, genuinely, with real intention, and the plan collapsed. And then you tried again. And it collapsed again. And somewhere between the second collapse and the third restart, a specific and deeply unfair story took root, that the failure belongs to you. That other people have something you lack. That discipline is the resource you are missing and the resource you cannot seem to acquire. Read this exact number carefully. 58%. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau documents that 58% of Americans who establish a formal savings plan abandon it within 90 days. Not one person. Not an anecdotal pattern. 58%, across documented institutional survey data. Your plan did not fail because you are in a rare and unfortunate minority. Your plan failed in the largest documented majority of American savers. And the research does not stop at documenting the failure rate. It documents the mechanism, the precise architectural reason why ambitious savings plans collapse at the midpoint rather than the beginning or the end. Research published in the Journal of Marketing Research by Kivitz, Erminsky, and Zheng documents what behavioral scientists call goal gradient reversal. The motivational pull of a distant goal peaks at initiation. Compare these two trajectories side by side. On the left panel, the large goal motivational architecture, high excitement at launch, steep decline through the middle months, collapse before completion. On the right panel, the small unit progress architecture, lower initial peak, consistent through the middle phase, sustained to completion. Notice the massive gap between these two paths at the midpoint. That gap is not discipline. That gap is architecture. The plan built on a large distant goal generates anticipatory excitement at the moment of decision and complete neurological silence during the only phase that determines whether the goal is ever reached. The middle. Month 3, Month 4, Month 5, when nothing dramatic is happening, when the goal feels as far away as it did on day 1, when the first unexpected expense creates the perception of regression. That is precisely where the documented collapse occurs, and it occurs not because the person weakened, but because the motivational structure of the plan was never engineered to survive that phase. Now inside this isolated container, the second institutional dataset that no savings advice you have ever received acknowledged. The J.P. Morgan Chase Institute, conducting the largest bank account-based study of American financial behavior ever completed, analyzing 2.5 million Chase account holders, documents the income volatility reality that percentage-based savings advice was never designed for. Lower-income households, those earning below $35,000 annually, experience month-to-month income swings averaging plus or minus 30%. Middle-income households earning between $35,000 and $75,000 experience swings averaging plus or minus 15%. Follow this income volatility line as it swings above and below the fixed savings target line across 12 months. Notice the months where the target is achievable. Notice the months where it is mathematically impossible. The impossible months are not failure months. They are the months where a plan designed for stable, surplus income makes contact with a life it was never tested against, and breaks. The plan was load-tested for a life smoother than yours. That is not an accusation of the person. It is a documented critique of the plan. A $500 monthly savings target that is achievable in a high-income month becomes mathematically impossible when hours are cut, when a shift disappears, when the month simply produces less. And the moment it becomes impossible, the percentage system has no architectural response. It simply fails. And the failure triggers what research published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology by Paul Delacchia calls the what the hell effect, the documented behavioral pattern in which a single transgression of a self-control goal increases the probability of complete abandonment by 40%, not because the mathematics are discouraging, but because shame from the transgression is psychologically more costly than the financial setback itself. You did not quit because you were weak. You quit to escape a shame the plan's architecture produced on schedule. Now the Federal Reserve data. Every year, across more than 11,000 American households, the Federal Reserve's report on the economic well-being of U.S. households documents one finding with remarkable consistency: 37 to 40% of American adults cannot cover a $400 emergency expense with cash or its equivalent without borrowing or selling something. Look closely at this highlighted figure. Not $400,000. Not $4,000. $400. And the Urban Institute's research documents what happens when a single unplanned expense averaging $1,200 to $2,400 arrives in a financially fragile household. Notice this domino sequence carefully. One emergency triggers credit card debt accumulation in 71% of financially fragile households. The median duration of that debt burden is 18 months before payoff. During those 18 months, interest costs at 20% annual percentage rate on a $1,500 balance consume between $270 and $450, money permanently transferred out of the household economy and into the financial system. And the elevated credit utilization during that period suppresses the credit score by an average of 15 to 25 points, raising the cost of every subsequent borrowing event for years afterward. That is the cascade. That is what one unexpected expense does when there is nothing in place to absorb it. The emergency fund is not a conservative savings preference. It is the primary debt spiral interruption infrastructure in a household's financial architecture. And the intervention that stops the first domino does not require a completed fund. It requires the first month. This is the finding from the Pew Charitable Trust's financial security research that inverts the entire conventional emergency fund narrative, and it is completely absent from the savings advice you have previously received. The Pew research documents a nonlinear relationship between emergency fund size and household financial stability. Follow this protection curve as it climbs sharply after each milestone. Households with zero liquid savings face a 72% probability of falling into poverty following job loss. Households with 1 month of liquid savings face a 52% probability, a 28% risk reduction. Households with 2 months, 33% probability, a cumulative 54% reduction from zero. Households with 3 months, 18% probability, a cumulative 75% reduction from zero. Notice the acceleration in the early months. The first month of savings produces more financial stability improvement than months 4 through 6 combined. The wall works from the first course of bricks. You do not wait for the roof to be protected by the walls. This is the architecture of the $50 brick system. And it is built on exactly 3 components, each one a direct behavioral engineering response to a specific documented psychological vulnerability. The first component is the brick itself. $50, fixed, identical, every payday. Not a percentage of income, because percentages of volatile income are variable, cognitively complex, and mathematically guaranteed to fail in low-income months. Not an aspirational contribution amount, because ambition at month 1 and ambition at month 5 are completely different psychological states, and the research documents that high contribution months make low contribution months feel like failure rather than variation. The fixed unit is calibrated to survive the worst-case income month without requiring cancellation. It is the same brick every time. Harvard Business School professor Teresa Amabel's progress principle research, conducted across 238 professionals over multiple years and published in the Harvard Business Review, documents that small incremental progress on meaningful work produces more consistent behavioral persistence than large infrequent milestones. The neurological mechanism: each documented unit of progress triggers a modest dopamine response that reinforces the behavior. The brick system is neurologically engineered for the middle, the phase where every other savings architecture collapses. The second component is the conversion rule. Every freed dollar, a cancelled subscription, an insurance rebate, an overtime payment, a tax refund, converts to bricks within 24 hours. This is not a motivational preference. This is a direct behavioral engineering intervention targeting a specific, Nobel Prize-winning documented vulnerability. Richard Thaler's mental accounting research, which contributed to his Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, documents that unexpected income is categorized differently in the human mind than earned income. It is sorted into a mental found money account and spent at 2 to 3 times the rate of earned income on non-essential purchases. Look at this split-screen contrast carefully. Left panel, a $1,140 tax refund without a capture rule. Day 1, dinner out. Day 3, an impulse purchase. Day 7, subscription upgrades. Day 30, balance 0. Right panel, the same refund with a 24-hour capture rule. Day 1 converts to 22 bricks, transferred, removed from the found money mental account before the documented evaporation mechanism activates. The 24-hour window is not arbitrary. It is precisely timed to interrupt the mental accounting reclassification before it completes. The third component is the ceiling. No volitional contribution above $50 per brick, regardless of surplus in any given month. This rule addresses the specific failure mode that percentage systems produce, the high contribution month that creates an implicit expectation, making the normal contribution month feel like underperformance. The ceiling eliminates the high contribution month entirely. Every month is a brick month. The next brick costs $50, same as always, regardless of what the previous month produced. Moving down to the automation layer, the mechanism that converts this 3-part architecture from a plan requiring continuous volitional adherence into a system that runs without decision-making. The behavioral research on default settings, documented in Thaler and Sunstein's nudge framework and validated across millions of participants, establishes the foundation. When retirement contribution enrollment requires an active opt-in decision, participation averages 40 to 50%. When the identical contribution is made the automatic default requiring active opt-out to cancel, participation averages 85 to 95%. Dividing this finding into its practical implication, the difference between a savings behavior that 40% of people maintain and one that 95% maintain is not discipline, incentive, or education. It is which option requires an action to continue and which option requires an action to stop. Compare this timeline side by side. On the left panel, the manual saving system, a decision required on every payday, made under the documented conditions of decision fatigue, mood variance, financial pressure, and circumstantial interference. Across 14 months, that system requires 28 individual volitional decisions, each one vulnerable to the exact psychological conditions documented as most destructive to financial self-control. On the right panel, the automated system, one setup decision, made once, machine executes every subsequent Friday regardless of fatigue, mood, circumstance, or motivation level. Phase 1 activates on the first payday after setup. The transfer fires. The brick is laid. The discipline happened once. Every subsequent morning, the machine decides. Now the divergent study. 2 women, identical take-home income, identical starting dates. Renata automates $50 every payday. Paulette sets a $500 monthly target with manual contributions. For 2 months, their savings move in parallel. Moving down to month 3, Paulette's hours are cut. The $500 target is impossible on reduced income. She transfers nothing. The shame cascade activates, the what the hell effect documented in the Volatility research. She restarts in month 4 with a renewed target. Hours normalize. She saves $200, not the full target, but progress. Month 5 brings a car repair. Progress erased. Look at the massive gap between these two paths at month 14. On the left side, Paulette's system shows 3 restart points, 3 shame cascades, and a 14-month total of approximately $1,800 in accumulated savings across multiple fragmented attempts. On the right side, Renata's wall shows consistent brick-by-brick accumulation, the same brick, every payday, wall building steadily, arriving at month 14 with approximately $8,000 in a dedicated high-yield savings account. The difference between these two outcomes is not income. Not intelligence. Not discipline. It is the architecture of the unit. Paulette's plan failed not because she was weak. It failed because it was load-tested for a life smoother than hers and generated shame at precisely the moment that documented research predicts shame-triggered abandonment. Now locked inside this specific section of the analysis, what happens to the brick system in a missed month? Month 8. An unexpected expense consumes everything. No brick is laid. In the percentage system, the wall resets, or the shame cascade makes it feel like it does. In the brick system, the wall simply holds its height. No bricks fall. The wall does not deteriorate. It does not judge. The Volatility research documents that plan abandonment is triggered not by mathematical discouragement but by the psychological experience of shame following the first failure. The brick system is architecturally engineered to produce no shame at the moment of failure. Because nothing broke. The wall waited. Month 9, the same brick, $50, same as always, goes back into place. The system continues. Pop-up text dynamic accent, the wall just waits. At some point in the construction, the wall begins laying its own bricks. At current high-yield savings account rates, documented at 4 to 4.5% annual percentage yield in the current rate environment, subject to change with Federal Reserve policy, a completed emergency fund of $20,400 generates approximately $918 per year in interest income. That is 18 additional bricks annually, produced purely by the wall's own compounding, requiring no further human decision. The break-even point where monthly interest income reaches $50, where the wall contributes 1 full brick per month from its own earnings, arrives at approximately $13,300 in accumulated savings. Phase 1 builds the wall. The wall, once large enough, begins building itself. The implementation protocol requires 3 moves, executable tonight, in under 20 minutes. Move 1, find your real survival number. Not your aspirational budget. Your documented essential expenses, housing, utilities, groceries, transportation, insurance, minimum debt payments, calculated honestly with no aspirational cuts. Divide that number by 50. Write the brick count once. That number represents the wall you are building. Put the paper away. The ceiling is already working. Move 2, set the automated payday transfer before sleep tonight. Not this weekend. Not when you feel ready. Tonight. Open your banking application, navigate to scheduled transfers, and set a $50 recurring transfer from your checking account to a dedicated high-yield savings account at a separate institution, one that requires a transfer, not a tap, to access. The slight friction of the transfer barrier is documented to reduce impulsive withdrawal rates significantly. 1 setup decision. The machine handles every subsequent Friday. Move 3, start your conversion list. Every subscription, fee, dormant service, or forgotten expense that is identified and cancelled from this point forward has a standing destination, the BRIC account, within 24 hours of cancellation. No deliberation about what to do with the freed money. No holding it and checking where the found money evaporation mechanism will consume it. The capture rule is already in place. The transfer destination is already established. The freed money converts to BRICs automatically within the window that Thaler's research documents as critical. From step 1 through step 3, the entire sequence requires no ongoing discipline, no monthly decisions, no motivational maintenance. The progress tracker advances 1 unit, same amount, every cycle, regardless of what the month produces. This content represents general financial education based on publicly documented behavioral economics research. Individual financial circumstances, income levels, essential expense structures, and debt obligations vary significantly. High-yield savings rates are subject to change based on Federal Reserve policy. Consult a certified financial counselor for guidance specific to your circumstances. You are not building a number. You are building a quality of afternoon. A boring Tuesday in month 9 when the mechanic says $380, and you hand over a card, and wait, and drive home. And you turn onto your own street. And you notice, in the specific quiet way that the absence of catastrophe can be noticed, that nothing happened. No spiral. No midnight table. No restructuring of the month. The expense cost money and nothing else. That is the deliverable. That is what 408 BRICs actually produce. Not security as an abstraction. Security as a Tuesday. The emergency architecture described in this framework eliminates one layer of financial fragility. But the structural mechanisms that prevent that emergency fund from growing into long-term wealth, the specific traps in spending architecture, debt structure, and tax positioning that convert savings into stagnation, are mapped in complete detail in the analysis waiting for you right here. Click to examine how many of those traps your current financial structure is already exposed to.